I don't know, it'll be like maybe 15,000. But like I said, if we do sell that other property on Pleasant Street, I will ask for the, land bank to be reimbursed, so.
Okay.
I don't know what this is.
Which one?
Well, it's a special article, but it's got a separate funding source.
It's
I'm
a
not sure.
transfer, I don't know.
Yeah, right, I'm not sure what it gets established as. We should check with Lisa.
The land bank, you mean?
No, I mean, they want to set up a maintenance fund essentially, which we would normally say is a special article because it's coming from the general fund, but it's not. It's a transfer from somewhere else. So we've got to let's check on
But if we
how.
authorize the spend of the land bank, it can it stay in there?
Well, that's if,
And then,
well, that's what I'm saying.
used as needed.
If
I
it was a
think-
special article, it would.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it,
So we got to figure out how, because other special articles need to be included in the budget for 2020. This one wouldn't necessarily have to do that because it's got its own funding source. So I'm just saying, it's a little bit,
wouldn't it be like the CPA money where they do a
It might be.
special,
yeah,
article
let's
and then
just
it's
check
account?
with Lisa, follow up, so.
Okay, let's see.
Windows,
Oh, this is for the protective windows on the only Cook house that the Historical Commission voted money aside a year ago or so, but they just need more money, so it's like an additional $1,000 or $1,500.
you already been to
possibly.
FinCom? Sorry, I haven't been here in a while.
Have I? No, I haven't, because I don't, we haven't,
Okay,
they didn't meet last time,
right.
and so then they haven't discussed the warrant yet, so.
Okay. I have a question about 27 and 28, Cindy.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know that we need both of these articles anymore.
Okay.
So that CPC is paying for a portion of the Pheno property that we paid debt on, and then paying for a portion of the police station, right? Both of those loans now are essentially just one payment. It's not they're not, do we need, I guess my question is, do we need to authorize the individual transfers based upon what the purpose was? Or can we just do one that says for a CPA portion of Pheno and police station project debt? Because it's really just one payment now, because we refinanced and put all the debt in one.
I'm just reading.
Yep.
To see if I can figure out what the difference between the two.
I mean, it's just two separate votes, it might be able to be knocked down to one article.
Did you, I noticed you took off the two articles that are paying for the gap in last year's.
You're taking it from two different places. From preservation, historical preservation account,
It should be,
Open space.
community
Oh,
preservation
well, there you go.
budget account, reserve account.
all right, forget it.
All right.
I was trying to get rid of articles.
Okay.
Never a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, these are quick ones.
Because they're, I mean, they're essentially being transferred to pay the same bill now.
But they're coming from
Different
different.
plan, yeah, okay.
So then the other two articles I had on there
Yeah, I didn't take them off, so,
I don't see them on
well, then
here.
they're just not on, so, to fix the amounts.
Well, last year,
Do-
not enough was voted in for each of those debts, and so we need to vote
But do we have to? I mean,
I don't know.
do we actually have to? I mean,
I'm not
can't the
quite sure
C,
what people are talking
so,
about right
okay,
now.
so,
Yeah, there was
So-
not enough context. there
sorry.
for Cindy.
so, we made this vote last year at annual town meeting, and let's say the payment was $90,000.
Yeah.
But it turns out the payment was actually $91,000, so they're short $1,000.
What
So,
if-
so the question is, do we have to go back to town meeting and ask for additional $1,000, or can we just, they can take a vote at CPC to pay the additional 1,000? Like, what, do we have to get town meeting authorization to pay the difference if it's more? I
So
understand,
town
yes.
meeting said 90,000 for purpose X,
Yes,
and you actually need 91,000 for purpose?
yes.
Right, the numbers aren't right, but yeah,
And what fund did it come out of?
CPA.
But what parts?
Well, one, the police debt is out of the historical and budget reserve CPA
So it's the same,
accounts.
it's the same two questions, just short on both of them.
Right.
And it's like a couple $100 in each one.
So
Well,
can we just
1,000.
add it to the amount in,
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Could we add it to the existing articles for the same purpose?
I think you have to vote them at the town meeting, because everything on CPA has to be voted at the town meeting, unless it's an administrative,
But these would be town meeting.
So,
right, no, right.
all right, so we just have to add those two in, Laura. We can add them right with these two in that 28, 29.
So that the amounts you're just
Yeah,
gonna add in there.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah,
we
maybe,
lost two, we gained two, it's whatever.
Well, I'm just saying, is there a way to,
Add it to the language, but not if they have to be individually voted.
but then you just have two motions to do, I mean, it depends. Do you want to take the 90,000 and then the additional one and put them together to get your 91?
Why don't you just say
Yeah,
to fund the FY19 and FY20 police station, because then you can cover it in one article.
That would cover the amount in both?
Well, I mean,
That will cover
you
that.
specify that you're doing it.
Yeah, but do we
for
have to
FY19.
specify how, individually, how much each payment is each year? I mean, that fluctuates every year.
But you have to know what amount of money you're taking out of what
Which
fund
thing?
and spending,
Which fiscal year?
in which fiscal year.
so it's probably 4 motions.
I think
You
it's,
know,
I
in the
think it's,
time we're taking to argue about it.
right, I think it's easier just to stick two
Put 'em in.
things on there. Okay,
And then it's
Yeah.
easier to explain to town meeting
yes,
why we have these
We're
extra
sure.
two that are only $500 each.
right.
Okay.
That's
Great.
my personal.
So 2 additional articles to
Yes,
cover
we
those
need-
things.
Right,
And you'll send me?
You have them.
right. I might,
But I can send 'em again.
they might be mixed in my stuff, and I haven't gone through it in a while.
Okay.
All right.
Thoroughly.
I'll send- I
Gone
can
through
send
it in a while. Okay, and then affordable housing coordinator.
Mhm.
Alrighty then. Which we tried to put on consent, but that turned out to be no.
Yep.
Okay.
Historical Commission, Scenic Road. Nothing to say about that right now. They
Okay.
haven't met to even discuss it, so.
All right, planning board. This, 33 is to delete the moratorium language.
Again,
Yep, Tom already talked about 34 and 35. And so then there's just 36, which I know nothing about. So, not for any lack of you sending information, just for my lack of.
No,
being able
we
to-
never actually, I don't think,
Okay,
communicated this.
just to- I haven't been able to read.
So this idea came out of initially historic, but it came from a few boards, and again, we decided to just do a citizen's petition. The short explanation is the goal here is to protect the island and the lake. So we're requesting a vote to transfer the control and custody of the island, which is currently owned by the town. It was taken for back taxes in the 90s, 80s. Transfer it to the Parks Department and declare it a park, which would then, it falls under what's called Article 97 of the Mass Constitution, and it becomes protected parkland. The goal here is just to stop it from being, potentially sold, developed, changed from what it is, which right now is just kind of a nice natural, resource on the lake. I know there was an attempt to purchase it in the 90s that was rejected by the Board of Selectmen at the time. And so as Parks has signed off and Historic has signed off, I have not talked to Conservation for any information yet. This is the first you guys are hearing about it.
I have several
Go
things
ahead.
to say that may shorten this
Okay.
conversation considerably.
Mm.
It is a citizen's petition, so it stays on the way it is.
Mhm.
As a citizen's petition, I will say this, the form of this right now isn't proper. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have some commission put on an article if they wanted to do this, that would actually enable you to do this. But right now, and I've only just heard you say this, the property is now owned generally by the town
Yes.
for general municipal purposes.
It was taken and it was foreclosed on through tax title. That was it.
So then you would need a vote saying it's no longer needed for general municipal purposes, and then you would need to put an article on to transfer it to the care, custody, and control of somebody either Concom or Parks, and to authorize putting a CR for, and to spend money for someone
Well-
to fund the CR, and also, if you really want it to be a quote-unquote protected park as opposed to conservation or open space and used as a park, but if you want the actual park designation, that then becomes a whole nother ballgame, because I think then you have federal laws involved in a massive project. But this, as written, the way it is now, isn't compliant with 48.
With what?
The state law for transferring land.
Oh.
Whether you want to put it for
Fair enough.
conservation or not. And so I'm saying, if you want to do this, you need a vote from the people who have the care, custody, and control now, which I believe is the selectmen, saying that it's no longer needed for general municipal purposes. And once they do that, then you need another vote from the selectmen, because it happens to be the same board, saying that this land is available to be disposed of for either to another board, like Concom, Parks, whatever, and for different purposes. And that would be whatever you want, open space, recreation, parks, whatever. And then you need a town meeting vote to do everything, to accomplish it. But, and I can tell you this from experience with other towns, you can't get the town meeting vote before you have the selectmen's vote, or whoever owns the property's vote, to declare it's no longer needed for its current purpose, and then you need the selectmen. The selectmen vote can be after, but the initial vote saying that the agency who has control over it doesn't need it for that existing purpose has to come before town meeting. Now, I don't know how strongly the selectmen feel about this article, but theoretically, that vote could happen between now and town meeting, should you want to do that. But you can't have the town
Right.
meeting vote before the authorization of the
It sounds
town
like
is
we need to do a little
available.
more research and either bring it back or pass it over. And, maybe now's not the time to discuss the specifics,
Yeah,
but,
I think, I mean,
Enough.
there's a lot of steps to do it right,
right.
if you want to do it that way. I think that it'd be probably too rushed to do it this time around, but that doesn't mean that we can't consider it in the future.
I just want to ask a question. I like the concept. Just wondering what is the benefit of making it park rather than keeping it town-owned? Is the
So-
only benefit so that it can't be sold?
My understanding is that, because we went through this with the playgrounds, if something is declared parkland, conservation land, even if it doesn't have a conservation restriction, you don't have to pay all that money. It's restricted under Article 97, and a change of use requires a vote of the state legislature. So it provides a little extra protection, as opposed to the town on land on 16 that isn't protected. You could sell that tomorrow.
What
as
about
long
as
as it's-
open space? I
But
mean,
wait, you're right and wrong. If I heard your question correctly, why do we have to put it into parks versus open space? and
yeah, like what's
conservation?
I mean, we already own it.
Right now, you own it for general municipal purposes, which means it is unrestricted, and it
Right.
could be used, you could do anything you want with it. You could sell it to make money, you could do
Right.
anything you want. If you want to keep it protected with Article 97 protection, you need to put it either in, let's just keep it simple. For open space or conservation, you would vote to put it in care, custody, and control of the Concom for conservation purposes, and to seek special legislation to get Article 97 and to have someone hold the restriction. You do that, it gets protected, there's a third party that will hold the restriction, and so if you ever want to take it out of there, you need 2/3 vote of the legislature and some swap land to get it back out and do it, and you need,
Okay,
but that's even a lot less
okay,
than if you specifically put it in quote-unquote parkland.
all right. I have
Bottom line is,
one
though,
follow-up.
that you're saying that this, the way the article is now is not,
Compliant.
wouldn't work.
It's not in the proper form, and you need some votes by the selectmen to get you there, because the property is in your, assuming that it is, that your information is right, that it's in their control, I have no reason to doubt you. You would
So-
need those two
No,
votes.
it is, this came up 2 years ago, about this. Okay.
So it sounds like we got more work to do.
Is
And
there a
then-
building out there?
Stays on
No,
here,
there
right?
were houses, they burnt down.
Okay.
There's a foundation.
There's nothing
It's
left.
really not all that usable. There's just, I think we'd like to keep it the way it is,
Got it. Okay.
that way.
Well, I thought there used to be something Okay. Warrant.
What?
Is it staying?
Stays on here, though.
Yeah.
Because it's a citizen petition,
Okay.
they can
We'll just
pass
have to
over
pass
it,
over it, yeah.
Got
take
it.
no action. if that's what
Okay.
they wanna do.
That was really fun to
Still got a
do.
long way to go here.
Hopefully town meeting, Jay, goes faster than that.
Ah, God. Okay,
Now what are we doing?
we're
I said
doing the
hopefully town meeting
budget
goes
now.
faster.
Well, let me just
There's
make, see,
something that-
right, see what else is here for you, Cindy. I lost my agenda a long
You
time
don't
ago.
need me on the budget?
I don't think so.
That breaks my heart.
It's very, very nice.
I cause enough trouble in the rest of them.
You do not.
I think there is.
Warrant, architect study, maybe that,
What are you
maybe,
reading from?
what?
I'm like, what are you reading from?
I'm in
Agenda.
the
And I was
agenda.
just saying, do you want to go?
Oh, you might as well stay.
Go to the budget last, right?
You might as
Yeah,
well.
maybe we should get people out of here if they.
Oh, my
sit here.
God. What?
What?
That me?
You're here no matter what.
Do you have a cot in your office? I have not seen you, that's why.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Let's just run through these.
Fine.
Consider the appointment of Mark Russo of Mendon as substitute van driver for Mendon Council on
You
Aging.
can just consider
I move
Mark
to
Russo
appoint
as
Mark
substitute.
Rousseau as a substitute van driver for the Mendon Council of Aging following successful background check.
Second.
No, and I still have to do this whole budget.
Hi, how are you?
Lord knows if I'll.
How are you?
Good, good. In the past couple of years, we had 3 drivers, our two primaries and a backup. And since 2 have retired, Bob Gebeline and Wallace Matthews, we're left with 2. And we're just finding that because of scheduling, vacations, other jury duty, for example, if somebody gets sick, we really need a 3rd. And so we've had the good fortune to have Mark Russo here, who is new to Mendon. He joined Mendon back in August of 2018. He researched everywhere in the world he could retire, and he chose Mendon.
Wow.
So lucky us. Actually, he also has joined our senior veteran work program in January. So
Excellent.
when we discussed the need to have someone here, we were very fortunate to look at his background. He is retired from the military, from the Army, 36 years, a colonel. He could whip us into shape if he wanted to, but he's very, he's very kind of understated. He works well with us. We would love to have him on board if you folks would, so appoint him.
Sounds good to me.
So first, thank you for your service,
Thank you very much.
and welcome to Mendon.
Yes.
I don't have any questions.
I don't either. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for your
Thanks
time.
helping out. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Consider signing architect study contract.
I move to sign the contract with Catlin and Petrovic Architects, PC, for the architect study of the senior center expansion.
Second. Hi there.
Excellent.
Hi. Mark, I know you would ask for some background info on this.
Yes.
Just, this was not a bid, this is a request for quotations that result in a negotiated price. So what I do have for, is the background on how we got there and who the committee members that chosen are. And then I'll give you the actual contract, which Cindy Amara has reviewed twice. So the basic gist of it is we did an RFQ that was issued on October 31st. 37 firms received it, 10 firms came to a site visit, 7 firms submitted qualifications by our November 26th deadline. The Architectural Engineering Study Committee, whose members are on the second sheet, winnowed that down to 4. We interviewed 1 a week in January, and in the beginning of February, we selected Catlin Petrovic and negotiated a price with them. And they submitted a draft contract. Cindy reviewed it, came back with 6 changes. Mr. Catlin came back and said, we accept 4, 1 doesn't pertain. Cindy came back and said, you wanted the 5th one in, he put the 5th one in. And he signed it. And I have 2 copies, both signed by him. He's just asking for the chairman's thing. The price we negotiated was $35,000, which is a combination of the state grant and the $20,000 appropriated by the town. I should tell you, he started at $100,000 and we got him down at $35,000.
That's good.
Well, we didn't have $100,000.
That's true. So just a question.
Yes.
This committee, how did that come about?
Well, it's since the warrant article for the study put the money under the COA, we appointed a subcommittee, and the subcommittee consists of Amy as the senior center director, myself and Earl Perlman, who respectively are the chair and vice chair of the Council on Aging. We have the president, the vice president, and a board member of the Friends of the Elders. We then asked Mark Bacchino, because this is the town shelter and that's his area, and to oversee that. And we asked Mike Mendelia, not just as a member of the finance committee, but because he's a construction supervisor in real life, and he's proved invaluable in vetting costs that the architects discussed in their interviews with us that we thought were rather outlandish. He said were actually very real. So we appointed the subcommittee to go through this process. My understanding is this is following the process the library used. If and when, or I should say when the town approves money for the actual construction, then we'd be back to you to name a formal building committee. But we just did this as an internal subcommittee. We thought the Friends were important because they are our allies in raising money and things like that, and probably will help raise money to outfit in addition.
I appreciate the work that was done here. My concern is that when there's a committee organized to do work for the town, it really should come to the Board of Selectmen and be advertised for the public to participate.
Okay.
It's just my thought. I mean, because you have people like making a recommendation on behalf of the town, and I just think it should have been done a little more formally.
Then I apologize again. We followed the model of the library in which the library trustees administered the search for their consultant and hired him that way. And we followed that procedure. If we were improper, I apologize. That's on me.
No, and I just think
Yeah.
if that's the way they did it, I wouldn't agree with that either. So.
Okay. I'll also point out, though, because town money was involved, all meetings were public and publicly posted. All the minutes are posted. We've had public participation at the meetings from people who were there, and once this starts, there'll be a great deal of public participation in the study itself. But again, I apologize. That was my call, and if I misjudged it, I
think, especially like. In terms of, being sworn in as on a committee, following through with ethics training, probably should have town emails doing any business like that. So maybe we should just shore that up moving forward. Anyway, back to the...
Well, duly chastised. Well, you know who the members are if you'd like to appoint us. I will point out that of the 8 members on the committee, 4 are town employees with town, of a sort, with town email and are taking the ethics.
Right. I'm just looking out for the overall...
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I modeled it after the library because I was on the committee appointed by you. And if I did it wrong. But in any event, we have 2 copies of the contract.
It's Mark, I think.
It's not me. I'm not moving.
Right. Stop tapping.
I'm not tapping anything.
Nobody move. Nobody move. Okay.
Okay, go on. It wasn't me.
Okay.
All right, go on.
All right.
I'm good. Is there any more to be said?
Well, we would ask you to approve the contract and sign it.
Want to tell them a little bit about Catlin and Petrovic?
Do you want to go ahead?
Literally not anyone.
It's one of the microphones that's just shaking on the table, so it must not be level.
It's not this one.
It's not this one.
Okay, I'm not touching the table.
Touch the table now.
Oh,
Oh,
Touch it again.
That's weird.
I don't think
Oh my
it's
God.
one of these.
It's me.
Right,
Okay, you're
okay.
getting distracted by
Yeah.
very small things.
It doesn't bode well for your budget.
You know, at this
No.
time of night, I don't blame you
Mark,
one
there's
bit.
something shiny on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, would you mind signing?
Sure.
There are
That's strange.
2 places.
Somebody say, move this meeting forward.
Indicate, I apologize.
No,
And you, Kim, you keep one and we give the other to Mr. Catlin.
Okay.
Definitely not that.
It's all that energy I have after the heart surgery, it's just going through the mic.
Okay.
what's the date? 18th? 3. Okay. This is yours.
I'll give this one to Kim.
Really should give it to Laura.
Me, yes,
Okay,
please.
it's doing it by itself, by the way. I can hear it, it's not even there.
Yeah, I wonder if it's back at the device or. Yeah, I think it's back there.
No, it's coming out of the speaker back there, but it's the mic up here.
Thank you.
I start tapping on purpose.
Okay. Is there anything else that you need?
Oh, I'll make a copy for us. We don't have anything else.
Excellent, thank you. Green aggregation. We're not used to that.
Can I ask a quick question about 15 Inman Hill?
Yes.
Everybody's been so hard to get in touch with. I'd like to put it on the central register this Thursday, and Cindy's been looking over all the materials, and so is that okay to do that?
Sorry.
So 15 Inman Hill,
Yes.
the lot that we're trying to sell, the town lot, I'd like to put it in the central register this Thursday, and Cindy's reviewed all the papers, and she's gonna do the final revision, like, tomorrow?
Not tomorrow, Wednesday.
Okay,
I won't be in the office tomorrow.
okay,
It's fine with me.
all right. So, all right, okay.
It's good.
So we just wanted to give you an update on the green aggregation. And Carolyn and I have been working on that as part of the Energy and Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee. And what we're trying to do is the aggregation, but adding the renewable energy above the 14% that the state requires. And the town's under contract with Colonial Power Group still. And so I worked with Mike Capadonna. Kim said, to call and everything. And he feels very confident that he'll be able to get a rate that's below the national grid rate and include renewable energy, class 1 renewable.
100%.
Huh?
100%?
No, not
or
100%,
just
but a
some?
portion,
Okay.
right, and we're not sure how much.
So now we don't have any.
Right, nothing right now. And so, as a matter of fact, Mark needs to get, since we suspended the program, he has to get the approval again from DOER and DPU. And you had him go forward with that?
He asked me if we want, all he had to do to get started was to post something, and I told him to hold off until the selectmen had heard about continuing in aggregation,
Okay.
because we had such a mixed review
Right.
last time.
And it takes 6 months to go through that whole process. And so if he started now, he'd have it done for November, and then he'd be able to come to you with bids. And there's a couple things that, because there was some, reaction to it last time, is that we would, if we move forward, we would, put articles in the paper, maybe something out in the electric bill, just to let people know, what's happening. But I just wanted to explain that, well, first of all, this gives residents another choice. Otherwise, unless they choose another electric company, they default right to National Grid. This gives them another choice. And the providers are vetted through Colonial, so there's no issues with, like there were some electric companies that were going door to door and people were having issues with, but they'd be vetted through Colonial. Residents who have already opted into a different electrical program, they would stay. Nothing would change for them. It's only the people that default into National Grid. And residents can opt out at any time. So no one's, held to that.
There are a couple of things that I would like to highlight. Newton recently did green aggregation. They worked a whole year on a campaign for it and to educate everybody. And of course, we're not Newton, but at least there are a lot of towns in the Commonwealth that are doing green aggregation. Maura Healey has encouraged towns to do that instead of people getting ripped off by having door-to-door people saying, well, you can get your clean energy this way, your clean electricity. So this is something that Maura Healey feels is much more accountable as a process for people to get green electricity. What else? There was something else that you...
Well, one thing we didn't mention is the one thing that we'd like to request is the Class 1 renewable, because that encourages new renewable energy projects in Massachusetts, so the energy is local, which is more efficient. It provides local jobs. And also, certain renewable energy projects don't really need funding, like the wind farms in Texas are going to happen with our money or without, but in Massachusetts, they need the money. And so by supporting Class 1 renewables, that would do that.
One other thing I want to say is that when Newton decided to do this, they actually signed the contract in November for it to go into effect in March. And they were able, as I said earlier, we're not the same as Newton, but what was really interesting was that they are getting the minimum, which is 14% of renewable portfolio standard percentage right now for this year. Next year it'll go up to 2% for the next 10 years. And the thing that I think that's really useful to know is that Newton is now going to have a total of 60% of renewable energy, green energy. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to impact what the market is going to be going forward, but certainly that's an incentive for a lot of green energy to be created in the state and New England.
And they also got it at a good price.
They got an excellent
Really
price.
So I guess what we're asking tonight is that we can move forward to go through the process with the DOER, DPU, and then in November, you'll see exactly what you're voting on. And Mark feels very confident that'll be less than the National Grid basic rate that everyone would default into that hasn't picked something else, and it would include Class 1 renewables. But it takes time, and so that's why we needed to meet with you.
Ultimately, we won't be able to make a decision until we see the number, but
well, and that's
open to...
right, and that would be like around November, but you won't be able to make a decision unless he goes through the whole process again, so that we can do the aggregation.
We won't really know what the rate would be, the percentage of renewable energy that we would be purchasing until the bidding goes out, and they'll give us back some prices, and our idea is to ask for a number of levels of commitment to green energy, but we'll have to see exactly how that plays out, and obviously we would work with that with whatever is available. So it's kind of a weird thing that but it's group purchasing for the whole town, and we want to be able to see what we can accomplish with green energy.
Right.
It could also be more than just Mendon. Like I think he groups towns together so that there'd be other towns that would. So that's why they can get a good price.
I'm just listening to the tapping.
Yeah, that's a
I
weird
don't really
noise.
think it's
And I'm
anyone
exhausted, I've
doing.
been going
just
since
move
4:30
the
this morning, so.
Okay, well, for me, it's, go ahead, you know, you can go forward and we'll revisit once in November timeframe.
Yep. I'm fine with it.
Great,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
It's fine.
It's really weird.
Consider changing, it's literally nothing.
Because it's like, it's after the fact.
Would you move the microphone to the other
Chief,
table?
wanna come up?
Chief, do me a favor, move those mics this way.
Move that mic to that other table.
Thank you.
Hopefully that'll work.
That was simple.
Sounds better already.
Changing ambulance fees.
Okay,
No, you're good, Cindy. You're all,
Cindy,
Yeah.
can go.
you're set.
Sure.
We'll see you when we see you.
Yes, good luck.
Thanks.
so one of the things, besides an awful lot that I've been looking at, was on the ambulance side, the fees that we're charging for ambulance transports. They were last updated for Mendon in 2011. So there's an opportunity to adjust them.
Okay.
On the spreadsheet that I gave you, it shows the current rates, Mendon on the top line, and then 3 other clients. They don't give us what municipalities they are, so they're anonymous to me as well.
So what's Chief, just so I know exactly what you mean by a client. Oh, so they're different municipalities?
It's a different municipality, yes.
Okay, I got you, okay. Thank you.
And then I gave 3 different options here for you to consider as far as increasing the rates. Option 1 was just an average of those 3 other municipalities. And then I gave you a guesstimate as to what the impact of going to those levels would be on the revenue increase based on our mix of patients. No matter what we do with the interest rates, it's not going to impact any patient who is Medicare or Medicaid, because those are fixed fees. So this would only be applicable to private insurance, auto insurance, and people who self-pay. Option 2 is if we were to take the top municipality from the 3 that were given to me by our billing company. And then option 3 is 3 times Medicare. It seems to be a standard that's used by municipalities is a number times Medicare. So you take the Medicare rate times 2, 2.5, or 3. The Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts over the last 2-3 years have been in discussions with, I guess, the insurance industry as well as the legislators, because the insurance industry is looking to cap rates at one point they were looking at Medicare plus 5%, which would just devastate communities that provide ambulance services. But the Fire Chief Association offered to cap it at 3 times Medicare. There are many municipalities that are above that, including some of our neighbors who the charges go up to over $2,000 on a paramedic level transport. But my recommendation to you would be to go to the 3 times Medicare. And then as Medicare rates, and I don't know if the board can do this, but as Medicare rates fluctuate each year, we just automatically change the ambulance rate to 3 times Medicare. So it's a formula that's in there until the board decides to change that.
So when you're forecasting your revenue, Chief, is it just based off of your average of calls? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, it was based on a 1-year average of what type of insurance or pay it was for that run.
Okay.
And then there was a split that particular year. It's pretty much 50-50 ALS versus BLS, which is unusual. Typically, it's a 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 ALS, 1/3 BLS. I attribute that to our lack of paramedics within the service, especially with some of the people who have been out. And I think we may see that our revenue increase as that works its way through.
Just in the last column of the right, what are those numbers?
Those are wrong.
Oh,
Under
those
the
are the-
mileage to hospital?
No, all the way to the right, there's no title on the top.
I'm sorry,
I'm
that's
seeing it.
that's a total of the, that's the total increased revenue guesstimate
Okay.
for each one of those options.
I see.
So going to 3 times Medicare would bring us just short of $50,000 on
And
it.
obviously, it's a wag, but
It is, I mean, normally I would have liked to go back more years, and I just didn't have the opportunity to get that
yeah, well,
data.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'd love to, I hate to say it this way, but you'd love to see no ambulance calls because that means everybody's healthy.
Right, right,
You know what I'm saying? It's
Yep.
like- it's, you know, it's kind of the issue with the hospital.
right.
You know, you gotta drive revenue to keep the business going.
But I'm not gonna go out and trip people on the street
That's
to
right,
do
yeah.
that.
Well, I'm good with option 3.
I'm fine with option 3 too. You know, it's, it makes sense because there's a formula tied to it, and we're not just,
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
you know, doing a thumbstick there, trying to figure it out, so, I'm
Right.
fine with that. So I gotta make a motion on that, right?
Yeah, I think we just gotta change, specify it a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know, so
Let's see, I move to approve the process to formalize the ambulance bill collection as outlined by, what?
Why not?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move to approve the change of the ambulance fees as outlined by Fire Chief Bill Kessler.
What
As
option
option
did you
3, I'm sorry, as
Option
option.
3.
Just make sure that's clear.
Thank you.
What?
Second.
I missed it.
That's how
Discussion,
tired I am.
all in favor?
I didn't get to
Aye.
s- What
Three
did you
option
decide to
three.
do?
Option 3.
Excellent,
Option
good
3.
decision, good
Okay,
choice. I
very
like that
good.
choice.
And that's as a permanent formula until changed
Effective
by the Board
immediately.
of Select. Yep.
Excellent, good.
So as Medicare adjusts, then so
Sorry,
does
Chief,
our.
I'm exhausted right now.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I
get
think
your
we all
second
are.
wins because we gotta do the budget.
Where am I? Formalize ambulance bill collection process.
So I know we could get into a very lengthy discussion tonight, and that's the last thing we want to do, so let me try to encapsulate it very briefly in that the outstanding receivables have been building in Mendon for many years. And I think we need to put some process in place so that that constant increase stops. What was done actually by the chief prior to me in the previous town was our billing company, Coastal Medical, would go through a series of bills. At one point, we were slipping letters in from the town as well. But it pretty much went for 6 months, and they say that after about 6 months, they're really not going to be able to collect that. They get paid on collections only. So once you get beyond their ability to recover revenue, I don't think they're going to put a whole lot of effort into it anymore. So in Uxbridge, once they got to that point, they would send a list over monthly of outstanding balances. I would go through it, as I mentioned earlier. If it's at the time, and this was 10 years ago, if it was $100 or less, we just weren't going to bother with it. We'd abate the $100. If it was a 75-year-old person, not to pick an age, but we just kind of try to take that into account. If we received a large portion of the ambulance bill from insurance, and there's some mitigating factors that the person may not be able to pay their $250 or $300 copay, so we would write that off. That would be reviewed by the treasurer collector, so that there was a second set of eyes, not just mine or the fire chief there. Both agreed Coastal would take it off their receivables. They would do one more attempt to get it, and then they would forward through the treasurer collector to a collection agency. Takes it off the town's books, pretty much puts it out to an uncollected. We didn't really recover a whole lot through the collection agency. It's probably a few $1,000s a year. But it just recognizes that there may just be some bills that we're just not going to be able to collect. So if the board's willing to follow something like that, I'll put it into better detail specific for us. and then maybe come back at the next meeting just for a formal approval to move forward in that direction.
Okay.
I'd also be suggesting that we essentially write off everything prior to some year.
Yeah, we did that at one point, probably,
Yeah, years ago, a couple
yeah,
years ago.
2 or 3 years ago.
Because there's still quite a, I mean, they go back all the way to 2005.
Yeah, we only did a couple of years off the list, and they were like 10 years out. We didn't want, because we wanted to come back and then determine how we were gonna decide which years to go back to. And so we just did the furthest back at the time.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, it's 2007.
Right.
There's $3,000 sitting from there, $4,000 from 2009, $5,000 in 2010, 11 in 11, 16 in 12, 13, 19 and 13. It's like 10 and 14, then 33 and 15 is where you start getting up.
So, did you guys talk a lot about abatement in Uxbridge? Did you have a lot of abatement requests in Uxbridge?
No, I mean, like we were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
we would get requests like that, maybe 2 or 3 a month, and that's out of a number of billing of between 12 and 1,300 patients. We bill here about $325 to $350. So out of that, I'd expect maybe 1 a month.
okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, oftentimes that was, somebody was deceased, and you would just take care of it that way. If it was a hardship, like I mentioned earlier, we'd bring it down to a Medicare rate.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it would be a no, the town's not interested.
Well, so, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the best process for those types of requests, because we always struggle with them. Because everybody can make a case, but now, in some cases, they're, somebody's deceased, to your point.
Right,
Yeah, that's an easier decision to be made.
right. And it usually comes with a copy of the death certificate, so
Yeah,
there
there's
is the
usually
proof
some
there.
supporting documentation. I struggle with that, Mark, when we get these. And tonight we were struggling with it. So I'm just trying to figure out the best way to manage that. I think that should be put into this discussion at some point, or some recommendations that when these requests come, what's the formal process? To your point, maybe that document that you highlighted earlier, Chief.
Yeah, it's very hard to put specific parameters to it, short of doing, what that form had, and asking for a W-2,
Yeah, I don't know what the
unemployment
parameters
checks.
need to be, or should be, or can be.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if there's a better way to do it to help guide the board, because otherwise, it's a conscience thing.
right. And as I mentioned earlier too, it's difficult to have those discussions in a public forum,
It is.
which is, and I don't know if the board is interested in allowing the town administrator or the treasurer collector to have that final say in lieu of the board, because we can discuss issues that won't compromise HIPAA.
Because we're dealing with HIPAA, maybe this is a question for Cindy. Because we're dealing with HIPAA, can we do that in an executive session?
I don't see how
I'm just asking a question, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, there's confidential, sensitive information, but
I mean, if a person has submitted something to us publicly in writing about their case, I mean, it's public information.
Well,
Once the
but
board reviews it, I mean,
if you're the final say and you have the opportunity to review that case.
well, if I'm the final say, then it never makes it here. It comes in the mail and it comes to me. It never makes it into the board's agenda,
Understand.
right?
Okay, I don't know, okay, I mean, I'm just trying to simplify it, because we get these, and like I said, it becomes a conscious thing. So,
Right,
it's not a great position to be in.
right. For example, tonight, the two we were looking at earlier, honestly, if I was in the other town, I would, the one that the insurance company paid I don't know, 75, 80% of, I would abate that just as a low balance. I think it's a $159 balance. And just knowing a little bit about the circumstances. The other one, if I'm remembering the status of the patient, I probably would have done a Medicare rate on it, which is still more than the check that they sent in, but that just gets some of that vagueness, though, that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, the recent one is 309. That's due. Unless there's something, what's this down here?
Which one is it?
The one that you just gave us here?
The one that I gave you tonight,
Mm.
there was an adjustment. Right, it was 309, but the insurance company was able to appeal a decision, the billing company was able to appeal a decision by the insurance company, and the
Oh, I
insurance
see.
company ultimately paid more. So it reduced the outstanding balance to $159.40.
Okay. I'm gonna hold off still on those.
And no problem, holding off on that, I was just asking,
Yeah,
putting
no, I
it
was
as more
just
of a
thinking.
general discussion on how to
Right.
handle it in the future.
Is the board open to some type of an automatic process going into place as far as, even if the board's involved in it, but just a regular, almost monthly basis of,
I'd be fine with that, but I just wanna have a further discussion about what the parameters would look like and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
yeah, there's the abatement part, but after 6 months, we're gonna go out to a collection agency as opposed to keeping it in-house, and that's a significant decision.
Right.
I'm not sure if I have the bandwidth to even think that through right now.
I know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Let me-
it.
I'm sorry, I think we need to have a further discussion about it, because I think it's probably bigger than I'm making it out to be,
Yeah.
based off of what you just said.
No, it's significant, and we, in the other town, we actually got to the point where at one point, the finance director wanted to start using the ability to put liens.
My guess is that if you make a recommendation and bring it to this board, the next time they have a meeting, they'll probably consider it then. That'd be my guess.
I'm hearing you.
I think they are more than willing to accept your recommendations on everything that's within your purview. So, and I agree, this billing thing has been going on for many years, and we need a system in place, and anything that makes it go faster so we can collect, we need, so
Right.
let's do it.
Kim's anxious to do the budget.
I am so anxious, so anxious. I almost died trying to get through this budget.
I will put some more meat to it and get on one of your next agendas.
Thanks, Chief, I appreciate it.
And I leave it here under any
Okay.
circumstance. Okay, actually, well, good, Chief, you stay, because okay, let's try to,
This is updated as of today.
as of today, so why don't you skip right to your last 2 pages and just rip them right off the back? And then I'll give you an overview of where we are. I'll give Michelle her sound bites so she can go. Town's operational budget is actually negative, almost 1% right now, based upon reductions that we've made, before we even make these cuts, where the town's reductions are what is sustaining our ability to fund the school. There's no question about that. Let there be no question. As we move forward into next year, that is, anyway, so as you know, we started this budget as we do every year, which is we ask the departments to submit their budgets with their requests in them for additions to their budgets, and they did that, and we had a list of requests for additions to budgets that, to the tune of about $520,000. Obviously, we're in no financial position this year to consider any actual additions to these departments' requests, and so you will see their requests in the requested column, and you will see my recommended budget in the recommended column. So, there's one exception overall to the budget in terms of something new. The board has made a priority over this past 2 years of really trying to address issues in regards to public safety, and so much so that we have brought in an excellent fire chief, and he has made recommendations about staffing and levels for really just increasing the basic minimum service levels of coverage that we need in order to sustain the department. He has given me 6, 7, 10 variations of a budget. I mean, his original proposal, based off the MRI request, was to have staffing of 3 additional full-time fire persons. Obviously, that is not something that this town can even consider at this point without an operational override for ourselves, and we are in no position to consider that. However, we worked the last couple of months and found a way to consider a phased approach in regards to the staffing, and so the one addition to this budget that is in here is the addition of 1 person, full-time person, in the fire department, with the intention of coming back each year for the next 2 years until we reach that full capacity that was recommended by MRI and now by the chief. So let's talk about how we get to where we are. So right now, as the budget stands, with the school's numbers and that one addition, we are negative $350,000. So I've gone through the budget and all of the areas in which I believe we can reduce in order to balance this budget with the school's request and with maintaining that one addition to our budget. So you'll see there is a box here under the list of department requests of additions of $500,000. There is a list of cuts. The target number again is 350. So I will give you my recommendations as to the areas you should look at in order to hit that
This is the
goal.
last page, Kim?
Yep, that second box, last page. The target is 350. The very first thing, and I talked about this earlier in the meeting, that I would remove from my recommended budget is the additional $100,000 debt payment for the police station from FY19. We can't afford it. The intention of that payment was to help subsidize and offset the impacts to the tax rate based upon the police station. A number of factors came into play over this past year, where the new values of homes and essentially negated the effect of the payment in the attention that we wanted. And so here we are. Now we need $100,000, and it's not going to do the actual thing it intended to do. So that would be my first recommendation. My second recommendation is we have a reserve for negotiations. I currently have $70,000 in that reserve. We have 5 unions. We are settled with all but 2 at this point. I feel comfortable that we won't be doing any really exploratory shared service things next fiscal year. I'd feel comfortable cutting that in half from 70 down to 35, leaving something in reserve for the 2 unions that remain outstanding. This, you can skip over health insurance for fire. That's how much it would cost if you decided not to fund the additional person in fire. The cost would be an additional $1,000 to overtime, an additional $26,000 in health insurance. So the net of not funding the fire position is $27,000, just in case you're wondering. My next recommendation, and this is actually a yes, because Don and I and Maya resolved this last week. There's $16,000 in there right now in property insurance for coverage for the police station construction. It covers the fire station. We've worked it out with the current contractor, and that's actually going to get picked up now through their contract, so that's coming out. So we're up. We've regained 16. FinCom reserve, same exact situation as our reserve. This is not ideal. They have $40,000 in there now. I'd recommend cutting it down to 20, and then when November rolls around, they pick up everything that we have available in free cash. So essentially, we're going to get from July to November. Ambulance replacement. This one's a little bit trickier because the ambulance is being discussed for replacement in a bunch of different ways, but there's currently, in the past, 5 years ago, so in the 5 years that I've been doing the budget, we have not funded anything into the ambulance reserve. There's currently $24,000 in that reserve. We need to replace the ambulance. It's $250,000. The CapEx committee plus the chief have been working on different types of funding strategies. It would be a combination of CapEx, possible lease purchase, possible all sorts of things. But at the bottom line, we don't have the money in operating at this juncture to spend from operating to ambulance. In the future, I would recommend that we start funding this again, but at this juncture, I do not recommend this additional 30,000 from operating. I take it from CapEx, I take it from other, but not from operating. The next one is actually a bit of good news, which is, this is the police station payment if the debt passes. So I spoke to you both about this individually. So we are on the hook. We have to pay $880,000 at a minimum from operating because the voters passed that in the fall, and we're very grateful, so we could award the project. If the debt exclusion passes on the ballot, this becomes a non-issue. Essentially, this payment goes into all our additional debt payments, and it's outside of the levy limit, and it doesn't affect our operating budget at all. If by chance it doesn't pass for some reason, we would be obligated to make payments on that 880. But we actually won't need or to borrow or even use that money until FY21. So we don't need to actually fund the payment in FY20. So that $150,000 payment, we don't need to make in 20. So now we can wait and see if it passes in May, and what we actually need to do, we'll have some direction. So those are my recommendations. The total of those added up is $351,000. And that gets your budget to even. Now, if you'd like, I can go through the areas in the budget where there are some smaller changes that you might want to, that there's nothing, like I've added here, Concom wants their own funding source for lake treatment. Okay, they want their own funding source for beaver treatment. Okay, those things are in there. There's really, everything is contractual that is in here, or was previously approved by the board at a different time. Our major budget drivers, Michelle, we got a less than 1% renewal on health insurance. We got an excellent health insurance number, but our Worcester County retirement number is almost 17%, which is almost $100,000 to us. So if you think about that, our budget just went down 1%, and we gave all of our money but $60,000 to the school. I mean, we are absorbing a lot of costs in this budget. This is not a level service budget. Everything else that's in, I mean, everything is straightforward. There's no significant changes to any departments anywhere, besides fire, and we talked about that. There's small changes based upon conversation with department heads about maybe where or how they fund a thing, but not increases to their budget directly.
That $27,000 delta on that position, if we were to fund it, it would cost us an additional $27,000. Includes fringe and everything else.
Well, right, so the difference is 20, you'd save 20.
Because you're accounting
You would
for-
save 27 if you don't do it.
Right, so
Right.
we're saying the same thing, but
Yep.
that's based off of overtime, calculations, et cetera, et cetera.
Right,
Okay.
so,
$3,000 increase for computer expenses.
those are our contractual increases for all of our different maintenance contracts. We have like 15 different IT contracts now.
Mark, can I comment on a couple of the cuts?
Yeah.
So, as you go through that, I guess, Kim, I'm a little concerned about the FinCom reserve cut, and I'm also concerned about the police station payment if the debt passes, because we have a little hedge right there. So if it doesn't pass, we're gonna be at $150,000. Not this year, I understand, but next year.
Right, I mean, I originally I have it in the budget now. And honestly, the thought was, said we were gonna fund it, it's in there, we're gonna fund it, it's a placeholder. But truthfully, it's gotta go in one place or the other. So like, it's either gonna go in debt, or it's gonna go in a special article. So the other option is to fund it in both places. Fund it in both places or fund it in no place, or amend the budget further down the line once we know. So, and they're both just exercises in futility because we don't even need to borrow the money until 2021.
I understand that. I'm more concerned about the FinCom reserve number than I am
Okay.
the 20 grand. I mean, I understand why you're doing it. We gotta make up the money somehow when we get back we can backfeed it, I understand.
Yeah, they're not gonna like it. I
No,
mean,
and there's a hedge,
yes.
again, so that's the only thing that I don't like when we start kind of getting into the weeds like this.
Well, that's what happens when
Right, I
we
mean,
get these increases that we can't afford.
right.
I
There are
understand.
many requests, so let me just talk a little bit about the requests so that departments know that they're, so we had another request for an additional SRO from the police department. There's the 3 fire personnel, could take the debt payment out. That's the
Can you just
children.
rattle off the line items so I don't have to look real quick?
Oh, just at the bottom sheet, last page again. I want to talk about the department's additions.
I got you.
that things
Okay,
they
I got
wanted.
you, yeah.
And the things that, there are things on here that I support 100% that I feel should be funded. The number one thing I think should be funded in this budget, and this is the second year I'll say it, is putting a second full-time position at the library, which doesn't seem like a top priority, but quite frankly, we are running a department with 1 full-time person, and it continues to grow every single year what they're doing over there. It needs attention. When we get to it, but I have to keep bringing it up because it's true.
It's not even that much, like, in the grand scheme of
not.
the budget, it's not that
Right,
much.
so we added the NIMUC testing, and then I have the ambulance in here, and then, the Council on Aging, we added a position, same situation over there. So 2 years ago, we added their part-time position for administrative help, and it's working great. They want a full-time position. Eventually, they're gonna need it. That's just where they're at. And then, same thing, I mean, we have 18 hours now for HR, but quite frankly, this is a town that has 38 full-time employees, and every single person that Dan is bringing in the summer, I mean, we hire a lot of people, and we have a lot of turnover. It's not sustainable on 18 hours a week. So, those were the requests, and those are my recommendations. So the next step,
The testing, NITMUC testing,
yep, I included it.
it is in the budget.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
That made it in.
Okay, go ahead.
So the next step from here, so normally tonight would have been our joint meeting with the FinCom in order to finalize the budget.
Yeah.
So if you're all right with these recommendations, and I will obviously voice the concerns about cutting any of the reserves, I will bring this budget to FinCom next Wednesday, God willing. And I will say this is the recommended budget from the Board of Selectmen. That's the plan.
I'm just running through this.
Go ahead. We can go through it all if you want. But
No, just looking quickly.
I don't want you to vote
There
on.
isn't much changes to
No.
this compared to the one you sent me the other day, right?
Correct. In fact, it's the same as it was, minus, we did some revenue adjustment on the ambulance piece. And then I'm still having some conversations about some other smaller revenue pieces, but nothing that would substantially change anything that we're doing. We don't, like I said, we don't have free cash to use to balance it. We don't have,
You know, the only other thing that I'm still tripped up on, and Kim, you tried to explain it to me, oh, you did adjust it. Oh, no, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, you
Yep.
did adjust it.
yep. The line just wasn't adding the fire chief's salary.
What's the 13, that's the adjustment for snow and ice for the
Yep.
average.
So all of the,
So that should
Wow.
have bettered our position. That should have bettered our position.
it didn't change it because my number was correct.
Oh,
And the budget just
it
changed,
just changed it from the, okay,
just changed the delta.
I got you.
Some of the increases in here, especially around salaries, look very high, but that's because we haven't done any transfers yet for this fiscal year for salaries. So in some places where it should say it says 4%, so things like that. Those will change as soon as we start transferring things around. Trying to think of any other specific request.
Well, the request is a request. We're not gonna be able to do them
Right.
anyway, so I'm not even gonna try to dig into them right now. you know, maybe at a later date. Except for the fire position, there's nothing in there that's,
There's nothing in there, but, and then the Concom's things, but like, there really is nothing that is like a substantial change. Nothing.
Okay.
And that's where we're at on the budget, see? That's what I was trying to get out last week. Or 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Has it been that long? Wow.
Just trying to get through that box of 6 things. So,
I was too distracted at that meeting.
it was a little distracting, I apologize. But you also heard the good news about the police station financing, which was the other thing we didn't get to, I know we're not on that, but that we didn't get to talk about, which is that we only need to borrow the 520 at the meeting, which really is helps simplify everything that we're doing, which is great. So people can decide whether or not they want to spend $500,000 on those adults or not, so. Anyway,
just as long as people understand how that all moves.
right, so, right, now,
Because right now, they're not looking at it as
right,
500,000, they're looking at it as 1.4
right.
million.
Okay, that's it.
Alright.
Technically, there's meeting minutes, but I haven't looked at
I
it.
haven't looked down.
Okay, I figured I'd try. It's all
Sorry.
right. That's okay.
Do we need to vote on the budget?
I guess you could, I don't want you to vote on the bottom line, because it's,
We usually do
Just-
our joint meeting with the,
right.
Yeah,
We're
just
still gonna
bring it.
have to do a joint meeting with them. I mean, if they're
they're gonna be
gonna,
looking for direction from us, so we have to
I
support them.
mean, you can say, I make a motion that we move forward with this budget with the cuts as recommended by the town administrator, and then I bring it, then FinCom vets it. I mean,
So moved.
yeah.
Second. All in
Yes.
favor?
Alright,
This, I'll go into KBS, and then I'll find like this line is off, and then I have to tweak stuff, and then it's off, so
okay.
I get nervous about approving the
Motion to-
bottom line.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chief,
Did
have a
it.
good
The
night.
longest meeting we've had in a very long time.
Mark, what'd you do to me? You were being so efficient.
It's necessary.
No, things pile up.
Back in there.
I think
Lots
this
of,
might be one of the record meetings right here. We've had some late ones, but
this might have been the long, it's almost 10.
So productive,
In
though.
open
Warrant
session.
and budget, oh.